Hello. I spilled some water on my shirt, but stuff still happened. So what's up? Video watcher types of this episode can have a fun time playing a little minigame called Watch the Spot on My Shirt Dry over the course of the recording. I do it for you. We're gonna start with something good. It turns out collective bargaining works. Who would have thought? A coalition of 5 different labor unions who all work for the same railway in New York went on strike, bringing the railway to its knees, which is to say, people couldn't take the rail 2 ways. Let's back up. What? What's going on? I jumped. That's fair. I jumped way too fast into this one. Let's set the stage and talk about the players in this story. You've got the MTA, that is New York State's Transit Authority, and you've got a coalition of 5 different labor unions who all work on this one railroad, the Long Island Railroad, LIRR. Or I guess Lear, if you really want. This coalition of workers represented about 3,500 people. It's about half of the employee base of that railroad. And they said, hey, we haven't been paid. Like, we haven't gotten a raise since 2022. I did some back of the napkin math. That was 4 years ago. Further back of the napkin math shows that that's not okay. I then flipped the napkin over and did more math, and the result was just pay people a living wage. So yeah, the MTA has not been keeping up with raises for these people that make this critical railway, one of the largest commuter rails in the nation, operate. So they went on strike and caused what the comptroller of New York State estimates was about $60 million of economic damages a day. Because it helps to keep your rails running, even in a country with basically no rail. So here's what's been going on. The MTA and the union workers have been trying to come to a new agreement for years. A lot of these unions had upcoming contract renewals, and they were like, hey, y'all, we need to be able to fund our lives. Like, where's our raise? They were also upset with a bunch of new rules that the railroad had recently put into place, so they went on strike. And it only needed to go for 3 days before the MTA buckled. During that time, they really interrupted a lot of service. 3 days worth of service, but ultimately they won raises and back pay dating back to 2023. The raises are not the entirety of what they were looking for. It's a little bit below what they were asking for, but the fact that they're getting back pay as well, and also a bunch of other concessions, that's pretty big for 3 days. Granted, that's 3 days after years of negotiation, but still. Now, there's another part of this that I want to talk about. This has been going on long enough that multiple independent commissions were sent to try to figure out what's going on here and just sort out the beef. Multiple presidential emergency boards were sent to go settle this before any of this happened. And what that board found was that the MTA was operating with at least a $700 million surplus in the past year, whereas the total value of the requests from all of the union workers for all of the raises they wanted was less than 20% of that surplus. To really drive this point home, the Presidential Emergency Board, the president there refers to the POTUS, Donald Trump. Even Trump's own people looked at this and they were like, yeah, that's fucked. Pay the workers. That is a high bar to clear. There was pushback from the state and the MTA from a couple of different angles. One was, oh, if the union workers want more pay, we're going to have to raise fares. And that's not right for all the commuters. They're going to have to pay more money, which I'll get to that in a second. But the other angle they were going at it with is, ugh, they're not supposed to be able to strike because they're public sector workers. And according to New York State law, they're not allowed to strike. Unfortunately for the state, there is a federal law, the Railway Labor Act, that mandates these people are allowed to strike. So it's a bit of a gray area, but it's actually not a gray area. They can strike, and also shouldn't be not allowed to in the first place. So here comes the governor of New York being like, oh, these people they're already paid so well, and this strike is just... That's a helicopter flying while I'm trying to record. Anyway, so here comes the governor of New York being like, oh, these people, they're already paid really well. And also, they're not supposed to strike like this. And also, if they do strike, we're just going to have to raise the prices. And that's going to mean that everyone's going to be mad at them. It's their fault. And then that didn't happen. And the concessions were made and fare prices are not going up. This is because that was bullshit. Here's a quote from the report from that presidential board that I talked about before. Quote, only about 1/3 of MTA operating budget comes from the fare box. The rest is derived from a complex variety of funding sources, although none from the federal government. As of January 26, 2026, the MTA Financial Committee Performance Report showed a calendar year 2025 operating budget surplus of $765 million. Overall, it appears that the fiscal capacity of the LIRR and of the MTA has increased in recent years, and in particular since the PEB 253 report. The PEB 253 report was another report from another commission the year prior on the same thing. Just trying to be like, hey, pay the workers. That's all. Ultimately, striking works, and the fear-mongering that they love to push about, oh, the strikes are unfair to the people who are going to be negatively impacted by the lack of service. Like, dog, it's 3 days of inconvenience for 3 years of back pay for thousands of workers who've essentially had their wages stolen. Well done. Solidarity. Moving on. Let's talk about Trump's new bank account. 3 decades ago in 2019, a then contractor for Booz Allen Hamilton working at the IRS, whose last name was literally Little John, leaked Trump's tax returns. The helicopter's back. This is actually the 4th time during this recording. So this guy, who I'm going to just refer to as Little John, works at the IRS seemingly explicitly just to yoink a bunch of tax returns for high-profile people. In between heavy sessions of remodeling using galvanized steel, Little John decided to leak this information to various outlets, including the New York Times. The New York Times published these tax returns in 2020, leading to Trump getting very big mad. Fast forward a bit, and you've got Trump back in office somehow. That happened. And with him back in office, he's like, hey guys, I'm going to sue the government for damages about my whole tax return thing to the tune of $10 billion. So Trump, as president, sues the government that he is at the head of for $10 billion over his tax returns being leaked when he said he was going to release them anyway. Anyway, he ends up not going through with that. Rejoice. The president's not going to pillage $10 billion worth of taxpayer funds. What's actually happening is that he decided to pull that case before a judge can make any determination and instead take a settlement from the DOJ. The Department of Justice settlement sets up a $1.8 billion slush fund, essentially, that political people in Trump's orbit can apply for payouts from. And just to top it all off, right after they announced that, the acting attorney general, Todd Blanche, who's also formerly Trump's personal attorney, signed an addendum to that settlement, saying also the DOJ can't investigate Trump based on prior investigations and findings. It's as ridiculous as it sounds. I want to say that there's been a lot of discussion about this and a lot of framing of this situation, saying that this is a $1.8 billion slush fund to pay January 6th people. That is messy. It is effectively a $1.8 billion slush fund. In fact, it's actually $1.776 billion because 1776, because of course they did that. For those who are not free like me, 1776 is an important year in American history. So what we have here is a essentially $1.8 billion fund that people can apply for payouts from, claiming that the Biden administration unfairly attacked them using the Department of Justice. That theoretically includes January 6 people who are going to probably apply for this, and probably some of them are going to get payouts, maybe even a lot of them. But it's not just a payout thing for January 6ers, it is Trump wanted to pull money out of the government via taxpayers, and when that one option was obviously not going to work well, he just set up a fund to pay out to whoever he wants. The fund is overseen by a board of 5 people, all of whom are Trump appointees, one of which is appointed in collaboration with Congress, and Trump can get rid of any of them at any time. So 5 Trump appointees choose who gets money from this $1.8 billion pool. And the only oversight is they're going to send a memo to the Attorney General once a quarter saying who got what. The fund is also set to close in the last month of Trump's term before the next president. And also they're like, guys, we can totally do this because the money is already earmarked for payouts, which is half true. And also Obama did it too, which is not accurate. Obama is a war criminal who did way too many drone strikes. And also, the thing they're referring to is an Obama-era program that was kind of similar, but it rolled out of a bunch of public court cases and had very strict public auditing requirements. This is money that is allocated because they said, trust me, bro, we can allocate this. And also the only oversight is some dude gets a memo. Now, a lot of people are saying this is illegal, and I would just respond with, okay. That hasn't stopped them so far. It's going to get challenged. It's going to get pushback. Everything that this administration does is break the law as hard as you can, roll it back, break the law in a slightly different way, while people are still debating whether or not you broke that first law, and just try to get everyone distracted until you move on to the next boring thing. But during that distraction, there's a lot of real people working really hard to push back on all of this, and there have been results. So we'll see. I have every belief that this is just gonna be a big win for the White House. Like, it's free money for them and red meat for their base, because they get to be like, yeah, we're gonna give billions of dollars to the January 6 people. It's like, it's a genuine win-win for them, unless someone's gonna stop them. Moving on to the wild world of Regional Energy Oversight Board elections. Buckle the fuck up! The Salt River Project is an electric utility provider for the Phoenix, Arizona metropolitan area. It's one of the biggest energy providers in the country. It also pretty uniquely doesn't have a traditional oversight board from a department in the state. It has its own oversight board, and there were recently elections for said board. These elections were strangely intense and pitted a bunch of climate activist aligned people against a bunch of people who were backed by literally Turning Point USA. Turning Point Action, the political action committee side of Turning Point, they were putting tons of money and energy into trying to get these people elected to the board of this regional energy provider. It didn't work. Yay. The election results came in, and the people who were aligned with green energy and renewables and new initiatives and stuff like that, they got most of the seats. It's now 8-6, leaning towards the green energy aligned people. This is the first time ever that this energy oversight board in Arizona, which sets policy about energy and rates and stuff, is primarily filled with people who actually believe in renewable energy. In Arizona, where the sun lives. So that's cool and great. You might be wondering, why the fuck is Turning Point involved in a Phoenix local energy board election? Well asked. You did a good job. The answer is that the COO of Turning Point was like, yeah, we were trying to turn out the vote ahead of the elections and the midterms and stuff. Oops. Granted, the president and vice president seats on this board both ended up going to the Turning Point candidates. And the reason why is wild. While most of the seats on this board are a 1-to-1 vote of homeowner to vote, the president and vice president seats are weighted based on owned acreage. If you are a landowner who has a ton of land, your vote matters much more than a homeowner with half an acre. And if you're not a homeowner, you just don't get to vote. It's basically feudalism. So while the clean energy candidates all won the 1-to-1 votes by a landslide, the president and vice president had a much more contested race because it was heavily weighed by people who have a ton of land. Thankfully, those seats are not actually as important as they may seem, they just cast tie-breaking votes. So this may actually lead to some good stuff for energy policy in the region. Congratulations, Arizona? Right. Measles. In 2025, we saw the most measles cases in America since the early 90s. 2026 is on pace to beat that. There are more and more measles outbreaks happening around the country, and I want to be clear, I'm not trying to fearmonger right now. I'm not saying that measles is about to take over the world. But it shouldn't be trending this way. It's likely that the United States is going to lose measles eliminated status. That means that it's likely coming back in a meaningful way. We had previously eliminated it, not eradicated. Eradicated is different from eliminate. Eradicate means it's gone. Eliminate means it's effectively gone. But it looks like this year we're likely to lose the status of having eliminated it. And we're not alone in that. Canada has already lost that status. A bunch of other countries have already lost that status. But again, it shouldn't be trending this way. I could litigate all over again RFK Jr. and all of the craziness that I endured during election season when people were claiming that he was somehow not an anti-vaxxer, which is the wildest claim that I still don't understand how anyone believed. The guy is loudly a self-proclaimed anti-vaxxer. I don't know, guys. Immunizations against measles have been ticking down, and in 2020, the immunization rate among kindergartners dropped below 95%, which is the herd immunity level. When you're above 95% immunization, the people who can't otherwise get vaccines are safe because of herd immunity. The people who are vaccinated are more likely to prevent the spread, helping those people out. But when you drop below that 95% number, it starts to tick up until it just becomes a problem. And it's now a problem. RFK Jr. is a dangerous grifter who is somehow the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the United States of America. He has spent the better part of his time on this earth trying to convince the masses that life-saving medical research is actually dangerous. He is now in a position of power, and he's trying to enact those views using policy. And it's working. And we're seeing those results. Thankfully, he is a dumbass who is wrong, and his dumb and also wrong ass is dumb and wrong about the measles vaccine, and vaccinations pretty much in general. So far this year, of the nearly 2,000 confirmed cases, 92% of them have been unvaccinated or unknown vaccination status. And a quick glance at a chart of measles cases from the 90s until now shows that it worked. It really wasn't a problem, and now it's ticking back up the second that people are like, you know what, I really do think that I'm just gonna not vaccinate anymore. Weird. Again, the absolute numbers are pretty low, and if you are vaccinated, the chances of you being affected are also very low. But just be aware that this is still a thing. It's trending in the wrong direction. I don't want to scare people, but this shouldn't be happening. Real quick on the topic of war, I'm not even going to try to say anything about Iran right now because it's constantly changing, but that's all still going on. I'm currently kind of looking at the whole Cuba situation because the Trump administration has spent most of the past couple of years talking about wanting to do something with Cuba. And as I was writing the draft for today, they announced an indictment of Cuba's former president over a thing that happened in the 90s. In 1996, a group of US-based Cuban exiles started flying prop planes over Cuba to drop propaganda pamphlets encouraging people to rise up against the government. And Cuba shot down some of these planes, and the US got big mad. And now they're using that to indict their former leader. It is very likely that the Trump administration is going to try to pull a Venezuela with Cuba or do something. Marco Rubio has been salivating at the idea for a long time. But honestly, I think one of the biggest reasons that they're not going after Cuba right now is because if we attacked Cuba, the resulting humanitarian crisis would create a flood of migrants going directly to Florida. Imagine Florida, a MAGA hotbed. The people who voted for the guy that was like, hey, no new wars and deport the brown people, starting a war that causes brown people to come to our shores. I think they're trying to figure out how that math will work. Lightning round. Here's the weather. The judge in the case of Luigi Mangione has thrown out a good bit of evidence, citing that the police were real bad with the way that they handled the actual arrest. Sony is joining Nintendo and Amazon in facing class action lawsuits over people saying that they profited illegally off of the tariff situation. You know, like the tariffs happened, and so Sony was like, hey, PlayStations cost more. And the tariffs were struck down, and Sony was like, hey, US government, give us our money back. Meanwhile, consumers still paid more. Twitter has a new rule that non-paid accounts can only post 50 times a day and reply 200 times a day. Side note, get off Twitter. There was a man in Tennessee who was held in jail by the sheriff after posting a meme online about Charlie Kirk after Charlie Kirk was shot. While he was being held, he missed his wedding anniversary and the birth of his grandchild, but he's now out and just won an $835,000 settlement. Get that bag. And finally for today, someone tried to drive a Cybertruck into the water, believing the marketing from Tesla that the Cybertruck can do that. He wanted to drive across the water, but instead drove himself to jail. He got arrested for that. Don't do that. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what vehicle you are going to pilot directly into the ocean. My name is Endeavorance. We'll talk again soon. Take care and be well.